When you spend 37 years playing the same character on one of television's most beloved soap operas tonight, actor Anthony Geary, also known as General Hospital's Luke Spencer, tells ABC's Aditi Roy about the show that won him 8 Emmy Awards. He once made all of America weep when Luke Spencer married Laura in the wedding of the century on television. But few know that behind that iconic role, Anthony Geary was a man who once collapsed under the weight of depression, drug addiction, alienation from his peers, and nearly chose death just to escape the character that made him famous. Anthony Geary was never the kind of actor who thrived on fame. He didn't enjoy parties, was bad at interviews, and couldn't stand being turned into a symbol he had no control over. The name Luke Spencer made him so famous he could no longer live a normal life, but it also dragged him through years of profound sadness, anger, and self-doubt. He publicly rejected the role multiple times, even pleaded for the character to be killed off, but the audience wouldn't allow it. The network wouldn't allow it, and Hollywood certainly wouldn't allow it. Behind those intelligent eyes and deeply nuanced performances lay a string of silent tragedies. A scandal involving a homophobic director, persistent rumors about his true sexuality, a secret relationship hidden for decades, and a reclusive life in Europe, where he was no longer a TV hero, but merely a survivor. And perhaps the most heartbreaking truth is this. While America celebrated Luke as a cultural icon, Anthony Geary, the real man, slowly disappeared, so no one would have to witness the deepening cracks in his soul. If you ever watched General Hospital, if you ever loved Luke and Laura, then maybe it's time you heard the rest of the story. It's not a beautiful one. It's one that hurts deeply. Early life. Anthony Geary was born in 1947 in Coville, Utah, a town so small that if you weren't a local, you'd probably drive right past it without realizing you'd arrived. No grand theaters, no dazzling lights, just dirt roads, construction sites, and quiet evenings. But it was from this unassuming place that one of America's most unforgettable television faces began his journey. The Geary family were devout Mormons, a branch of Christianity born in the U.S. known for its strict codes on personal morality, discipline, and clean living. In Mormon communities, humility, discretion, and dedication to traditional family values come first. Mormons don't drink, don't smoke, don't engage in premarital sex, and are raised to be kind, hardworking, and modest. This environment left a deep imprint on Geary's character. He lived by principle, stayed private, and remained deeply wary of fame. To him, the spotlight wasn't glory. It was something to be feared. His father, Russell Dean Geary, had nothing but an old truck and a shovel. He built a construction business with his own hands, never taking a day off. Geary grew up watching his father come home with swollen hands, sweat still clinging to his brow. That wasn't just a lesson in hard work. It was his first lesson in commitment. Once you choose a path, you walk it to the end. His mother, Dana, was the emotional anchor of the family, a housewife unafraid to show love or tears. She was the first to awaken in Geary the gift of observing and feeling people, something that would later become his secret weapon in portraying psychologically layered roles. Even as a child, Geary didn't watch films for entertainment. He took notes, writing down the movie's title, director, actors, and even his personal reflections. He wasn't drawn to superheroes or clean-cut leads, but to villains, the complicated, conflicted ones. The kind of characters he would later embody so memorably because no one else dared touch them. Though no one in his family worked in the arts, Geary always believed he wasn't born to do normal work. He would reenact movie scenes alone in his room, mimic the voices of great actors, and live inside characters as if that were the only way to understand the world. At North Summit High School, he wasn't good at math or science, but whenever there was a school play, it was simply assumed he'd get the lead. Then something miraculous happened. A drama scholarship from the University of Utah, the golden ticket out of that small town, opening a door only the daring could walk through. For Geary, it wasn't just a chance to study. It was a declaration. He had chosen his path. Not the safe one, not the easy one, but the one that felt true to his nature. Early career. Anthony Geary didn't begin his career under the glow of television lights or in blockbuster films. He started in the harshest arena for any actor, the stage. There were no cameras to cut and retake, no doovers, just one chance in the spotlight, and if you failed, the entire theater would bear witness. From his early college years, Geary stood out not just for his natural talent, but for the seriousness with which he approached the craft. He was one of the few students awarded the prestigious Presidential Award Scholarship for Drama at the University of Utah, an extraordinary achievement for a young man from the small town of Coville. For Geary, this wasn't just an academic opportunity. It was the first real proof that he belonged in the world of the arts. The turning point came in the late 1960s, when Oscar-winning veteran Jack Albertson came to the university to perform, and the subject was roses. Geary was cast as the son. After the final show, Albertson didn't just applaud. He stepped backstage and said bluntly, "Do you want to come on tour with me?" It wasn't small talk. It was a real opportunity, a ticket out of the comfort zone. And Geary didn't hesitate. He left college, got in the car with Albertson, and left Utah behind to enter the world he had always dreamed of, and never looked back. That tour brought Geary to Los Angeles, a city that doesn't easily welcome newcomers, especially not those without connections, without conventional Hollywood looks, and without a willingness to sell themselves for attention. But Geary chose another path. He went straight to the heart of the craft, live theater. In those early years, he performed in more than 50 plays from community stages to professional houses. Every time he stepped on stage, he learned to master emotion, control rhythm, and hold an audience not with words, but with his eyes. This was the crucible that shaped him into one of the most controlled and powerful character actors television would ever see. From the stage, Geary gradually crossed into television. He appeared in series like Room 222, The Streets of San Francisco, and The $6 Million Man. Though the roles were small, Geary always left a mark because he never treated them like throwaways. He brought depth to every character, often making them more memorable than the leads. In 1971, a major break came with the role of Roger in the groundbreaking sitcom All in the Family. Roger was a man whom the main character, Archie Bunker, suspected of being gay. At that time, LGBTQ+ topics were highly taboo on American television. But Geary didn't flinch. He didn't play Roger as a joke, nor turn him into a political symbol. Instead, he chose honesty, a regular human being. No cliches, no grandstanding. That episode became one of the earliest moments in which a gay character was portrayed on TV with nuance and humanity, and Geary was quietly recognized as one of the pioneers who made it possible. That same year, Geary joined the cast of Bright Promise, a CBS daytime soap. At the time, soap operas were not his intended destination, but it was there that he met the woman who would change everything. Gloria Monty, a visionary producer known for spotting unconventional talent. Monty saw something different in Geary from the start. He didn't look like a leading man, but there was something in his presence that made viewers unable to look away. Monty wasn't looking for perfection. She was looking for truth. She encouraged Geary to embrace his uniqueness. Sharp eyes layered with emotion, a deep voice that resisted easy interpretation, a style that defied the tidy boxes of hero or villain. And Geary followed her lead because he too was searching for a path no one else had taken. Years later, when Monty took over General Hospital, she hadn't forgotten the young man who had dared to play gay on TV in 1971, who had left college to pursue art, who had acted anywhere just to keep learning. And then she did something no one expected. She created a character from scratch just for Anthony Geary. That character's name was Luke Spencer, and that's when American television history changed forever. Career success. When Anthony Geary agreed to join General Hospital in 1978, no one, not even Geary himself, believed this would become the role that defined his entire career. The original contract was only for 13 weeks. It was a true supporting role, written to disappear after a few episodes. But that didn't happen because shortly after his debut, Luke Spencer, the character Geary played, not only refused to fade away, but exploded into a cultural phenomenon unlike anything daytime television had ever seen. In a genre known for suave, flawless leading men, Luke arrived like a punch to the formula. He was an outsider, a murky past, unstable temperament, and from the very start, deeply controversial. Not for heroism, but for violence. Luke raped Laura Weber, one of the most beloved female characters on the show. By all logic, that should have been the end. Instead, audiences were drawn to him, angry, confused, but somehow unable to look away. What made a character rooted in trauma and criminality become the man America followed daily? The answer was Anthony Geary. Geary didn't act Luke Spencer. He embodied him. He brought invisible scars to the character. Haunted eyes, anxious movements, a loneliness the script didn't name, but the audience could feel. Luke wasn't forgiven, but he was understood. And that understanding came from the emotional depth Geary infused into every frame. Then the unimaginable happened. In 1981, the wedding of Luke and Laura drew over 30 million viewers, becoming the most watched event in the history of American daytime television. In fact, it outperformed major sports finals and became one of those rare moments when an entire country seemed to pause at once. Luke and Laura became the first and greatest super couple in soap opera history. The term didn't even exist before them. That same year, Newsweek featured them on the cover under the headline "Soap Opera Goes Mainstream," marking the first time a daytime drama had broken through its time slot to become a national sensation. Geary, once an unknown stage actor, was suddenly recognized everywhere, from nightly news broadcasts to talk shows to magazine spreads. But Luke's success wasn't driven by scandal. It was born from a complete shattering of the traditional male archetype. Instead of the handsome, kind, faithful template, Luke was everything opposite. Dangerous, guilty, unstable, but with a complicated heart and a love that kept him from walking away. Geary transformed the character into a symbol of defiance against the monotony of soap opera stereotypes. Geary's success wasn't measured by influence alone. On a professional level, he became the most decorated actor in the history of the Daytime Emmy Awards in the lead actor category, winning 8 times in 1991, Innoventi de Teatro de Muse de Muyo 2012 and 2015. That wasn't favoritism. It was the result of a nearly 40-year journey of relentless work, not performing to impress, but to strip away the human condition on screen. By the time he exited General Hospital for the final time in 2015, Anthony Geary had appeared in over 1,200 episodes as Luke Spencer, a number nearly unfathomable in modern television. That's 5 times the entire run of Friends, twice that of Law & Order, SVU, and more than Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones, and The Office combined. If someone watched General Hospital every single day for 3 years straight, they still wouldn't see everything Anthony Geary ever performed. But even that staggering figure doesn't capture the most important truth. He didn't just play a character, he carried a soul for nearly half a lifetime. For Geary, Luke was both a triumph and a trap. He once admitted, "The more successful you are in soap opera, the fewer chances you have to become anything else, and I'm the perfect example of that." Yet, it was also Geary who said, "When stepping away from the role, I've logged more hours on screen than John Wayne, B. Davis, and Joan Crawford combined, and people believe Luke Spencer is real." That was my job to make them believe, and he did. Not through scandal, not through hype, but through talent, emotional depth, and the courage to step into a role no one else dared to accept. Anthony Geary didn't just succeed, he redefined what success could look like in a genre most never took seriously. And through that singular role, he left behind a mark that can never be replaced. Not just in General Hospital, but in the history of American television. Anthony Geary had a career spanning over 4 decades in the entertainment industry. But ask most people what they remember him for, and the answer is always the same: Luke Spencer. Though he appeared in over 50 stage musicals, numerous television shows, and a handful of films, Geary remained forever tied to that one role. Not because he lacked the talent to reinvent himself, but because the television industry and the public never truly gave him the chance. Every time he tried to step outside of General Hospital, whether in TV or film, people still called him Luke, and any other roles, if they existed, faded quickly into obscurity. General Hospital gave him fame, but it also boxed him in, casting a shadow over his entire creative life. Geary once said bluntly, "I don't want to be Luke forever." But whenever he returned to the screen, that was still the role everyone expected. For many actors, a single iconic role is the dream of a lifetime. For Geary, it was a closed loop. The place where he was most successful was also the place where he remained most confined. Personal life and hidden tragedy. For more than 40 years on television, Anthony Geary was one of the most recognizable faces in America, yet also one of the most private. While he played the dramatic, volatile Luke Spencer on screen, in real life, Geary was almost invisible. He never appeared at major events, never flaunted his home, and never had a single romantic scandal picked up by the press for decades. No one knew who he was dating, where he lived, or even whether he had ever loved anyone at all. And the less the public knew, the more curious they became. While his co-stars married, attended award shows with their families, and lived in the spotlight, Anthony Geary remained a question mark. Some said he was painfully shy. Others believed he had loved someone and lost, and many speculated he was gay, but it was all just rumor until February 2025 when a single Instagram post shattered decades of silence. Claudio Gama, a man living in Amsterdam, posted a photo from a pizza party celebrating his 6th wedding anniversary with Anthony Geary. Alongside the photo was a simple caption that sent shockwaves through the fan community. Tony and I met 30 years ago this February and got married 6 years ago, also in February. 2 anniversaries to celebrate. And just like that, the truth was out. Anthony Geary had been quietly living with his same-sex partner for 3 decades and had been married since 2019 without anyone knowing. No media coverage, no lavish wedding, no public confirmation, nothing. Claudio's posts went on to reveal glimpses of the life Geary had chosen. A small home in Amsterdam, intimate dinners with friends, good wine, and a cat named Max. No scripts, no cameras, no roles, just 2 people living honestly. What shocked fans wasn't just Geary's sexuality, but the fact that he had kept it private for his entire career. Looking back, it all made sense why he avoided the media, why he never brought anyone to premieres, why he moved to Amsterdam, a freer, more accepting place far from Hollywood scrutiny. Some fans expressed sadness at learning the truth so late, but many others said it only made them respect Geary more. He didn't live to please the public, he lived to be true to himself. And that love, however quiet, had lasted through 3 decades and was still going strong. Now Anthony Geary no longer has to hide. He doesn't need to perform another role because in the end, his most authentic role, being himself, is the one that leaves people speechless. And what about you? Upon learning the truth about the private life Anthony Geary kept hidden for decades, do you feel surprised, moved, or even betrayed? Maybe it takes reaching a certain age to understand that everyone has parts of their lives they choose not to share. Not out of shame, but to preserve something deeply personal and profoundly peaceful. And if a love has lasted quietly for 30 years, perhaps it doesn't need to be spoken loudly to be extraordinary. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What did Luke Spencer mean to you? And what part of Anthony Geary's real life makes you admire him even more? We'd love to hear your memories, your perspectives, and your compassion as fellow travelers on this long, remarkable journey. Even after finding peace with his partner, Anthony Geary remained distant from most relationships in real life, including those he had deeply shared the screen with. And no connection illustrates this more clearly than his relationship with Jeannie Francis, the actress who played Laura, the other half of the iconic Luke and Laura duo. For decades, audiences believed they were close off-screen, as inseparable as they were on screen. But the truth was far different. Geary was never one to share emotions, avoided social interactions, and rarely let anyone into his private world. Francis, by contrast, was more open, more emotionally expressive, and that difference often left them out of sync. They had silent disagreements over how to portray their characters, especially during the early controversial phase of Luke and Laura when the script required them to depict a relationship that began with violence and coercion. Geary, always prioritizing the artistic integrity of a role, openly criticized the producers and writers. But his cold, rational approach left Francis feeling isolated, particularly as she bore the emotional weight of connecting with a generation of young female viewers. For years, they barely spoke outside the set. And for Geary, who feared emotional entanglements and the personal expectations that extended beyond a role, that distance may have been a deliberate choice. He didn't like getting close to co-stars. No post-shoot dinners, no cast parties. He left Luke Spencer on the soundstage while the man behind the role slipped quietly into the shadows after every take. Only after both had left General Hospital, free from the pressures of image and performance, did Geary and Frances begin to slowly reconcile. Frances later reflected, "We learned how to forgive each other." It wasn't a warm embrace between lifelong friends, but a quiet nod between two artists who had once created a legend together and then moved past each other like two different worlds. For Anthony Geary, silence was never a lack of feeling. It was a way to survive in an industry that never stopped talking. And sometimes friendship with him didn't come from long conversations, but from a single knowing glance after years apart. For someone who had always chosen to live quietly, Anthony Geary also left the stage without fanfare. No farewell press conference, no tearful final day on set, no glamorous send-off. He simply disappeared, just as he had always existed in this world, humble, weary, and discreet. But behind that silence was a painful truth he wouldn't reveal until much later. His body had simply given out. In his final years on General Hospital, Geary suffered a serious back injury. Standing for hours on set, constant movement, and shooting simple action scenes that had to be repeated dozens of times a day gradually robbed him of the ability to walk normally. He was forced to undergo surgery, months of physical therapy, and endured stretches when he could barely get out of bed. For an actor who lived through his roles, it was the cruelest blow. Not because he could no longer perform, but because his own body had betrayed his passion. Geary once said, "I didn't leave Luke because I was bored. I left Luke because I was exhausted physically and emotionally." He didn't want the audience to see a tired, aging Luke Spencer limping through scenes. He didn't want to leave behind a worn-out version of himself after thousands of episodes etched so deeply into viewers' memories. And so he left in silence, not because his time had passed, but because his strength had. Perhaps after years of high-pressure work and fiercely guarded privacy, Anthony Geary had finally chosen a life that matched who he truly was. Quiet, private, and far from the noise. He now lives in Amsterdam in a modest home. No lavish mansion, no reality TV, no social media. Just Claudia Wama, his partner of 30 years, Max the cat, and a few close friends who visit from time to time. Instead of making public appearances, Geary devotes most of his time to books. He loves literature, especially Shakespeare. Before his rise to television fame, he had played Hamlet and Macbeth on stage, roles that demand serious psychological depth and true mastery of the craft. Now he reads, writes scripts, cooks with his partner, and lives at a slower pace. It's a deliberate choice, not trendy, but perfectly suited to his fiercely independent nature and the introverted lifestyle he's upheld for years. Geary no longer wants to act, not because there are no roles, but because he no longer needs the spotlight. For him, this is enough. Legacy and impact. Anthony Geary wasn't just a veteran actor. He was a man who changed the way Hollywood viewed daytime television. Before Luke Spencer entered General Hospital, male roles in soap operas were largely confined to rigid archetypes, either the perfect husband or a one-note villain. But Geary refused to follow any of those scripts. He infused Luke with inner conflict, moral failure, the weight of past trauma, and the capacity for redemption, elements typically reserved for film or primetime drama. Luke began as a villain, but Geary's performance forced the writers to rethink the character, evolving him into something entirely new. Not a hero, not a monster, but a man capable of change. That influence extended far beyond General Hospital. Luke Spencer became the blueprint for later complex male characters in television, paving the way for figures like Tony Soprano and Don Draper. It's no coincidence that critics once dubbed Luke the first antihero of American television, and Geary, the man who redefined the modern male character. Professionally, Geary also set an unprecedented standard for the soap opera genre. His 8 daytime Emmy Awards for the same role, an unmatched achievement, not only signaled the industry's respect, but proved that daytime performances could rival the emotional depth of film. When Geary left the show in 2015, there was no grand farewell. He vanished quietly just as he had lived. But for millions of viewers, Luke Spencer never left. The character remains a landmark, one against which all future roles will inevitably be measured: current life. Today, Anthony Geary is no longer a public figure, and that is a choice he prepared for long ago. Since leaving General Hospital in 2015, he has all but vanished from the entertainment industry. No new roles, no interviews, no appearances at tribute events or cast reunions. Even when the show invited him back for special episodes, Geary declined, gently but firmly. The only glimpses fans now have of him come from Claudio's occasional social media posts, like a pizza party on their anniversary or a quiet New Year's greeting from their small apartment during a European winter. Geary never made a grand retirement announcement, but with each passing year his silence has spoken louder than any farewell speech. His career chapter has closed, and he has no intention of reopening it. Not out of bitterness or fatigue, but because he achieved what he needed to and he knew when to stop. For many, that decision brings a sense of loss. But for Anthony Geary, it's simply a return to his truest self. No spotlight, just peace. He once gave his entire youth to bringing Luke Spencer to life. Now at last, he lives for himself. Anthony Geary never set out to be a star. He chose to be an artist. Without media backing, without capitalizing on personal scandals, he let the role of Luke Spencer speak for itself, and it spoke loudly enough to reshape an entire genre of television. As the spotlight faded, Geary didn't cling to it. He stepped off the stage, left Hollywood behind, and settled into a quiet life with his partner in Amsterdam. No press conferences, no comebacks, no curated social media. A man in his 70s living with books, scripts, and a cat chose to turn off the stage lights with his own hand. In an age where success is often measured by visibility, followers, and red carpet appearances, Anthony Geary's life feels like a counterpoint. Quiet, private, but free. In a culture that glorifies fame and constant presence, is a life like Anthony Geary's a failure or the highest form of personal triumph? What do you believe truly makes a life memorable, a long career, a lasting legacy, or simply the power to choose your own path? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story brings back a scene, a look, a line from him, tell us. Not to judge, but to hold on to something from a man who gave his life to acting just to understand the feelings of others. Did you watch General Hospital? Did you love Luke? Or did you ever find yourself identifying with those who choose silence as a form of self-protection? Leave a note, whether a memory, a thought, or just a thank you, because someone out there might need to know they haven't been forgotten. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss the next story of a legend you've always loved.